Hi, and welcome to Toni Time. We're going to have another very interesting show with Pat Burke. She's here. Welcome, Patricia.
Hi, Toni.
Pat, I go back and forth. Go get your coffee. The last show we had was about Star Trek, and it was just so much fun. And I'm encouraging Pat, and she's offering, and it's been great, to talk about what she feels that is important, another side of looking at people. Is that
That's right.
okay? And she wrote an article called Circle of Meaning. And it's a great article. And what encouraged you to write this?
Well, I wrote this article after I had been invited to China, to Beijing, China, in 2002 to be a presenter at a big conference on addiction treatment.
Okay.
And I was asked to do a presentation on spirituality and how spirituality is a resource or a support for people trying to recover from alcoholism or drug addiction. But we were going to China, and it's a very different culture. And I didn't really know too much about China in terms of their understanding of spirituality, except from what I'd read in papers or seen on TV or whatever. And so I was really kind of concerned about, well, how am I gonna talk to people in China, a very different culture, about spirituality and recovery?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Now excuse me,
sure.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but please explain to the audience, because I needed the explanation, and you do have it here in your article. Spirituality, religion.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. Spirituality, in kind of from my perspective, and it's not everybody's perspective, but spirituality to me, it really is about, it's a very broad term or understanding of a kind of a felt experience of a connection to something bigger than ourselves. And it's really about our human desire to find meaning in life, particularly find meaning in life difficult circumstances.
Oh, sure.
So that when I use the word spirituality, I'm talking in very broad terms.
Okay.
Religion really is more about a belief system that is that happens in a church or happens in the context of a specific religion like Christianity or Judaism or Islam. So religion tends to be more focused on belief systems, and there's kind of an expert, which would be a priest or the mullah or somebody in that particular church that explains to the parishioners, if you will, what those beliefs mean and how to live your life by those beliefs. So for me, spirituality is much bigger than our beliefs. Religion tends to be more of a community kind of experience where people share the same beliefs, belief systems.
Exactly. And I mean, spirituality to me is what you feel, what you think, what your life has helped you become. Going to religion, like you just said, it's a priest or a rabbi or whatever explaining things to you.
Yep.
So each one is fine.
Yeah.
And whatever would fit for you, it's okay.
Exactly. So spirituality to me is something that's sometimes people experience a very strong felt sense of their spirituality in church, but for a lot of people, they experience a sense of spirituality outside of the church, walking in nature, or for example, people who go to 12-step meetings or Alcoholics Anonymous or Al-Anon often feel a sense of spirituality this sense of connection with others, of something bigger than themselves, in contexts like that.
And that's what you talk about in your article.
Yeah, yeah.
AA offers that to everyone who comes in, but not everyone accepts it at that moment.
That's right. And one of the misconceptions that I think a lot of people have about AA and 12-step programs is that they are religious. And they're not. They're not a religion. It's not a church and it's not a religion, but there is a spiritual aspect to the program that has been found over the years to help many people, not everyone, but many people recover from alcohol and drug abuse.
Now, do you think that's because there is a support system there? Because everybody has the same problem.
Well, that's one of the very important pieces of 12-step programs, is that you come together, and it's a fellowship, so there's a sense of community, and that everyone has a similar experience in their lives, and so that really helps people feel not so alone with their problems of addiction.
Yeah, and they can talk to each other, and there is understanding there.
Yes.
Among that. So continue on. You're in China.
So I'm in China, and I'm thinking, well, how do I talk to these folks from a very different culture about spirituality when all I know is that, that in the past in China there's been a lot of oppression or repression of religion, right? So I decided, well, I'll just ask the audience about what they think spirituality is, but I developed this way of or a tool called the Circle of Meaning to kind of facilitate that conversation, and I started to think about all the conversations I have had in my own life with people about my own sense of spirituality, but also with the clients that I work with, their spirituality. What it means to them, and I started to discover that there were certain themes that kind of come up in people's stories about what spirituality means to them, and the interesting thing that only one of them had to do with what people think, their beliefs, like a belief in God or a belief in reincarnation.
Yeah.
Those are beliefs.
Yeah.
That a lot of these themes are really about the kinds of practices people engage in, for example, to connect with a higher power or connect with something greater. So meditation and prayer and things like that, those are spiritual practices. So I began to organize this tool, the Circle of Meaning, with the understanding that there are certain themes that seem to come up over and over and over again.
Looking at the article, and I looked at the name Circle of Meaning, and I'm thinking, all right, that's interesting, because a circle is never ending. When you get married, it's never ending love. So that was a very interesting concept when I started to read where you were going with this.
The idea of the circle. It's a great question, Toni. The circle is a kind of universal symbol. You just mentioned one meaning of the circle as a symbol is that it's never ending. There's no beginning, there's no end. Another idea of a circle as a symbol is that whatever is, there's an emptiness inside the circle. So that, and in Western culture, emptiness is not always seen as a good thing, but in Eastern cultures, like Buddhism and Taoism, the emptiness is a kind of a state of being that sometimes people aspire to through meditation.
Well, yeah, and I mean, in the article, which I was reading, and I read it to you before, there's a part here, we shape clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want.
That's a quote from the Tao Te Ching, which is an Eastern philosophy of Taoism.
Westerners wouldn't think of it that way.
I know.
I mean, they would think of it as it's empty, but not that you can fill it up.
Right. Yeah. So and China is in their cultural history, many people practice Buddhism or Taoism. So I thought, well, a circle that might be, again, it's a universal symbol, so it might be a symbol that folks in the audience might relate to. So I drew a circle, and then I started to put these different themes about spiritual themes, I call them, into the circle. And there, voila, was the circle of meaning. And it was the basis for a way to begin to talk to people about the really rich texture of their spiritual lives and their spiritual understanding. So again, getting back to spirituality is a real personal thing.
It's a personal thing. It's very personal.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a friend who has had a rough time, single mom, whatever, and she said to me, oh, this is only like a month ago, she said, well, you know, I know how you feel about religion. I'm thinking, you don't know really how I feel. She said, but I found Jesus. And of course, you know, the old comeback is I didn't know he was lost. But I said, whatever works for you. There's no judgment, there's no nothing. But I also feel that it saves people at times, no matter which way they go.
Yeah. And the thing that I think is important in terms of how I try to have conversations with people about their spirituality is to, you know, not get so stuck on the beliefs part. You know, okay, well, I believe this. If somebody says, you know, I believe in Jesus and I don't happen to believe in Jesus, or the person they're talking to doesn't happen to believe in Jesus, you end up in an argument.
You do, yeah.
And this is the basis for really most of the wars that have ever happened in the history of humankind. Is I believe this, I believe this. Well, you shouldn't believe that. You shouldn't believe that.
Yeah.
Right? So pretty.
I mean, you break it down, that's really what it is.
That's really what it is.
Comes down to that.
And it's mostly differences in about beliefs, about religious beliefs. Say, okay, I believe in God. Well, I believe in God, but I believe in this God, and I believe in that God. And it's like, you're wrong. No, you're wrong.
Again, yeah. Now, you know, you were talking about, there was another part here where, about the grass. Remember about the grass?
Oh yeah, one of the participants in the conference in China, one of the themes is spiritual teachers. So I invited people to think about someone in their lives, or it could be a fictional character, or a character from, you know, in their imagination. It doesn't have to be a real person, but a teacher, somebody they considered, or something they considered a spiritual teacher. And one of the women in the audience said, well, grass is a spiritual teacher. Not the kind that you smoke, but the
grass.
kind that grows on the ground.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, how is grass a spiritual teacher for you? And she said, well, grass gets trampled on all the time, but it always comes back and grows and rises towards the sun.
See, and Westerners don't think that way.
Right. Yeah.
The few that do, I haven't met yet. But I read that and I thought, you know, she's right.
Yeah. So it's so interesting that if I had presumed even that everyone's spiritual teacher was a human being, you know, I would have missed that really wonderful, sparkling moment in that conversation, where this woman was able to share this beautiful metaphor about resilience and about how we as human beings, like grass, really do rise up and come back after we've been trampled on.
And you know, that even opened up my eyes to the fact that it wasn't a person.
Yeah.
It was nature.
Yeah. Nature.
It was nature.
Right.
And that can also be a spiritual person. That's not a person, but it's nature.
It's nature.
That can be important to a person.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of my spiritual teachers in my life was a dolphin named Jeannie.
Really?
Yes. And way back, I won't tell you how many years ago, but a number of years ago, I was involved in a kind of a spiritual development group. And one of the things that we did was we went to Florida to swim with dolphins. And so I had this amazing experience of swimming with this dolphin named Jeannie, and this dolphin, and they don't usually do this, the dolphins don't, she came right up to me and touched me, but very gently, and she took my arm in her mouth, which has teeth in it, but very gently, and kind of led me around. And it was this powerful experience of connection to this other being on the planet that was huge. You know, they're like
Huge.
They're really big creatures.
Yeah.
And it should have been really scary for me.
And it wasn't, was it?
It wasn't, because I had this very strong connection with her, and she wanted to connect with me. So there was this, so that was she became a kind of a teacher for me. And I would often see her later on in my meditations if I was scared. And Jeannie might come up in my imagination to kind of, you know, not talk to me, but just say, I'm going to lead you around here, I'm right here, I'm going to support you, and everything's okay.
Wow.
So here I am in the, you know, her environment in the ocean water.
You were in the ocean water.
Yeah, actually, the swim with Jeannie was in a enclosed area in a research facility.
Okay. All
in
right.
Florida. But I've also been swimming with dolphins in the wild too, off of Florida.
Wow.
They don't come up and touch you, but it's still a...
Jeannie, though, I mean, from the time you walked into the room, what were you feeling? What were you thinking before you even got into the water?
I was terrified. It's like, whoa, there's these big creatures, you know, 1,000-pound creatures. I'm going into their environment. I'm a good swimmer, but they can be, you know, they can cause damage, for sure. So we got instructions about how to, you know, how to get in the water and how to swim, not to reach out, that type of thing, to injure, you know, to protect the animals.
Yeah.
So I was scared. And the moment, though, that she came up and she started to, you know, kind of communicate to me through touch, I lost all my fear.
Wow. Beautiful story.
So I think of Jeannie as a spiritual teacher.
Absolutely.
But I also think of that experience as a spiritual experience. It was...
She took away your fear.
Yeah.
Which could be a metaphor for life. It took away your fear for a lot of things. It's like people who suffer from anxiety and panic. You know, once they face one step, they can go a little higher.
Right. Yeah.
And this is what was happening here with you and Jeannie, but that's major.
It was a powerful experience, and one that's lasted, you know, for however many, 25 years, 30 years since I did that, had that experiat.
And it'll continue with you.
It continues with me.
Absolutely.
So again, as a spiritual experience, I find that's often one of the themes that comes up in people's conversations, in my conversations with people about their spirituality, that really enlivens people. It really, you know, it energizes people when they talk about their spiritual experiences.
So the format that you have developed, the Circle of Meaning, when you have a patient in your office and you're talking, how would you start that out? How would you say to them, okay, this is a circle. What's your stories? What are you thinking? I mean, how would you?
Well, it really depends on what the individual's coming for, and when I first talk to people, I usually ask them a little bit about their spirituality, if it's important to them, you know, if it's something that they would like to talk about. So I don't assume that
Right.
that topic of conversation is going to be something that they'll be interested in talking about. And if they are interested, I might bring out I have another worksheet that's just an empty circle called My Circle of Meaning. And I usually use that with groups or workshops, and I'll bring it out and talk about the circle of meaning. But in individual therapy with folks, it's more likely that I'll just have a kind of in my mind, I'll think, okay, these are some themes that might come up from the circle of meaning. And then I would just begin to, you know, inquire or listen for people's spiritual beliefs, or a story.
What you say in the article.
A story about a very alive experience, like my story about swimming with Jeannie. And then we would then kind of go more in depth in that. You know, what's the meaning of that for you, and how does that help you with, you know, with your troubles in your life? So it depends on the situation.
Sure.
Mostly in workshops and groups, I will use the worksheets, the circle of meaning and an empty circle, and then I have some questions that I might ask people to elaborate on once they've done a circle of meaning. In individual therapy, sometimes I've done that, but more often I just use the circle as a guideline for me to kind of help me shape the conversation with questions that point people in that direction.
Now, going back to your talk in China.
Sure.
Now, going back to that, now you weren't sure how you were going to be accepted. What happened?
Well, talk about a spiritual experience. It was really a powerful experience for me that the participants in the workshop, who were professionals, and many of their bosses or supervisors were there in the audience as well. And one of the things that we did learn from the conference organizers before we went there is that, unlike in the United States, where I do a lot of teaching and training, and people will just, the audience will just speak out if they have a question or want to make a comment, or they raise their hands. The conference organizer said they won't do that because in Chinese culture, kind of making yourself the center of attention in public is, it's a little bit of a no-no. So what I did was I respected that, and I asked people to, if they had comments or questions, to put them on note cards.
Good idea.
And then we gave those note cards to the interpreter, and the interpreter could read them anonymously. So we did that.
That's very good.
So we did that a little bit, but by the end of this particular workshop on spirituality, people were raising their hands.
Good. Good.
So
well, they felt comfortable with you.
They felt comfortable.
Yeah.
Because I was being very respectful of them and their culture. So that was a sign that I was well accepted, because the participants were taking risks and raising their hands and asking questions and responding to my questions.
Well, they felt comfortable with you, and they had a trust. You had, at that moment in time in that room, it was just all of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it probably, knowing you, it probably felt like a one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there was 100 in the room, you have that way of making people feel that way. That's great, though.
Mm-hmm.
So then at the end of the talk, did they all come up to you, or?
A couple participants came up to me. Again, because we were working through interpreters, there wasn't really a lot of time for that kind of personal interaction, because the interpreter had to go to another, workshop or part of the conference. So, but people did come up to me at different times during that whole week, and asked questions, or shared some of their experiences, and thanked me for bringing this whole subject up.
Now, is there a lot of alcoholism in China?
Well, partly the reason that
I mean, I never thought about it till now, but is there?
it's a growing problem.
Really?
Drug addiction and alcoholism is a growing problem in China as it's become more and more actually westernized and become more industrialized. The rates of alcoholism and drug addiction have skyrocketed.
Wow.
So,
Because normally I wouldn't think, because I mean, the Chinese grow up in such a restricted area. I mean, if they come from a family and it's the old time family growing up, I mean, you have your honor. You never show the soles of your feet. So many things.
well, again, I think that part of the problem is that as China has become more westernized and they're more industrialized, that the stresses of that kind of culture have led to more and more alcoholism and drug abuse. I think you'll see that more in the urban areas than in the rural areas.
True.
But I think it's been a kind of a not so great thing about becoming a world power in a more and more industrialized and westernized kind of society.
Wow. So you wrote this article before your talk?
After my talk.
After your talk.
Yeah.
So that inspired
That the article is based on my talk in China and applying the circle of meaning for a couple of years after the talk in China.
Wow. Well, I mean, this is about 5 pages, and where can somebody find this to read this article that Patricia wrote?
If you go to my website,
Okay.
in the articles section of my website, which is really a blog, I have a link to the full article.
Well, I think the article, you sent it to me, and I read through it a couple times because I kept picking up different ideas. And there was one area here. How was this belief influenced your relationship to drinking and drugs? And how was this supported in alignment with your commitment to sobriety or contribute to relapse? I found that paragraph very interesting. What are the consequences of holding this belief in your everyday life? What kind of response did you get from that? I mean, this is it's like quitting smoking. Quitting drinking is, I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
I've watched people go through it.
It's really hard. Again, it depends on what particular belief the person is talking about.
But there's support that they would get either from AA or their family. Usually, I mean, my father was an alcoholic. I never drank. I smoked, though, and it was hard for me to give up. But there was nothing that was going to let him know, or even if you told him that he was an alcoholic, he was not in his mind. And that's the way he lived his life. But then you have people now, different kind of generation. Their peers are now, I'm talking peers as movie stars or different people like that who are picked up on drug driving and whatever. Some of them think it's cool, but we're into a different generation altogether. What's your idea of the influence there? Is it harder or is it easier?
Harder or easier to quit or to get sober?
To get sober.
Yeah. Well, the cultural influences are really powerful ways of kind of influencing the younger generation to maybe start drinking and using drugs or start smoking. You may see, you see a lot more in movies these days and on TV of the actors, the characters are being portrayed in these films. They're smoking. They're smoking a lot, and for about 20 years you wouldn't see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's coming back, unfortunately, and I think that's a negative influence on young people, because then again, drinking or smoking pot or using drugs or smoking cigarettes, if they see an actor that they like doing it in a film, it becomes more acceptable. So I think that those kinds of influences have a tendency to kind of get the younger generation more interested in doing that kind of stuff. I don't know if it has much an effect on if somebody decides that they want to quit, whether that would be a problem or not in terms of quitting, because there are a lot of actors now who are coming out and saying, I'm recovering now.
They have money though,
and
they can go into rehab.
They can go into rehab.
We talk about people around here or New York or anywhere, and they don't have the money.
Yeah.
Then it takes willpower and support.
Well, and this is where the spirituality piece comes in. Right. Because the the 12 steps of AA, for example, they are spiritually based, and the idea here is that, and I use the word idea because I don't want to get stuck in this debate about beliefs, but the idea is that if you can connect to something greater than the self, then you don't need your willpower to stop drinking, because then it becomes you're aligned with a greater will, something that's bigger than you. So you don't have to. In Alcoholics Anonymous, when we talk about people who stop drinking, with their willpower, we call it white knuckling it. Yeah. Right. And it's not to say that some people can't do that, but in terms of how the spiritual beliefs or spiritual ideas might be a support to people, is that you don't have to rely so much on just you to get it done. You've got a community that's something greater than you. You've got some principles of living, which are the 12 steps. You've got the possibility of calling upon a higher power or something greater than the self to help you when you're having a hard time, white knuckling. Exactly. Okay? So that's how the spiritual beliefs or the spiritual piece kind of fits into helping people recover from alcohol and drugs. Makes sense. And smoking, because you know what it's like. Smoking, actually, nicotine is one of the most powerful drugs in the world, and it's one of the hardest addictions to kick. I mean, I had more people walk up to me and go, well, I just quit cold turkey. I don't know why you can't do that. I can't do that. I loved smoking. I did not want to quit. So what finally put you over the top? My dogs. Uh-huh. And how did your dogs help you quit smoking? I lived on a 5-flight walk-up in New York, and they had to go out like every couple hours when they were learning to be trained, and climbing 5 flights of stairs. Okay. Smoking. Virginia Slim's menthol ultralights. Still remember. Yeah. So your dogs were so important to you. That you finally gave up smoking for their sake. For their sake. I mean, literally, I had more people in my life who I wish you could smoke. Oh, it really bothers me. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. But my dogs. So how come your dogs were so important to you? Well, because after we'd come up and I'd light a cigarette and then I'd cough and blow the smoke, Shannon and Tori would go.
I'm thinking, oh, those poor things. And then I'd go to the window and blow the smoke out, and then I'd climb out on the fire escape. And then finally I said, you know what, I really have to stop. And then I took a pack of cigarettes 2 blocks away to the dog groomer. And she's a friend of mine. And I said, Mel, if I need a cigarette, I'm going to have to walk all the way down here to get one. And I did that a few times.
Very smart, very smart.
Did that a few times. And then I found Nicorette gum.
Okay. So, but it was your relationships with your relationship with your dogs that really put it over the top. And so, how would you describe that kind of the feeling part of your relationship with your dogs?
When I wasn't smoking, and I'd want a cigarette. Before I found Nicorette gum, I said, okay, let's go for a walk. Oh, they love that. And then, I'd run into people who were smoking, so I could kind of go, and it kind of went, and then the gum, I would buy the gum, and I chain chewed a lot.
Yeah. So but your dogs, you love them.
Yeah.
And you wanted them to be healthy.
Yeah.
And you wanted yourself to be healthy enough to take care of them.
To take care of them, yeah.
So would it be fair to say, and if not, please correct me if I'm wrong, would it be fair to say that your dogs might be spiritual teachers for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. They are in so many ways.
Yeah.
And, I chewed the gum for 13 years, but I wasn't blowing smoke in their face.
There you go. There you go.
Just recently, I stopped the Nicorette gum maybe about 8 months ago, and I chew on straws.
Yeah.
Just plastic straws.
So how were your dogs spiritual teachers for you?
Kind of, no matter what is going on in life, their life is very simple and basic. I love my mother.
Yeah.
I have to go pee. I have to eat. I want to play. Okay, it's raining and storming, and our power just went out, but I still love you, and I still want to play.
So they teach you that life is really very simple.
Very simple.
And that's very comforting and calming.
That's comforting, yes.
Yeah.
But it was the dogs. And now I have 3 dogs, but I chew my straws, they take my straws, I take it away from them, but it was not a habit I wanted to give up.
Right. So you had faith in your relationship with your dogs. Again, it may not be a religious belief about a God.
Right.
But you had some faith in what they were showing to you, that life is basically good. It's simple.
It's simple.
And it's worth quitting smoking for.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you, Toni. That's you just, in our conversation, we discovered how spirituality helped you quit smoking.
Yeah. And that's how it did with that.
Yeah.
Boy, you're good. You took me right into that, didn't you? I didn't even see that coming. Wow.
Yeah. So that's, so again, it's like if we can understand or kind of hold in our awareness that spirituality is a really personalized, but a very rich, but very broad meaning-making experience in our lives, then
exactly.
we can begin to listen for those themes and hear those themes in people's conversations.
Well, I always am impressed by the strength of people that they don't even know they have.
Yeah. Yes.
If they have someone, mentor, spiritual belief, their strength comes out. Unfortunately, people don't know they can look for that. They don't know it's there. They have to be taught. My generation, you just didn't, you were strong, that was it. That's what you did. You didn't cry about little things.
Yeah.
But nowadays I see people who don't know or do not think this applies to them.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that it's not so much, for me, it's not so much about teaching people a certain way of life or certain beliefs that I think might be helpful to them.
Right.
But engaging in this kind of conversation that you and I just had, respectful conversation, to help them discover if there are some spiritual ideas or practices or a sense of a community that might help them get out of that hole that they're in or the rough spot that they're in.
True, true. And I mean, as long as I've known you, which has not been very long, but I feel like it's been years, you have dedicated your life to this. You have. I know you have.
It's true, actually. It's true. I was definitely the social worker in my family growing up, and now that my family is in the process of taking care of my elderly parents, I've become the social worker again, trying to help everybody, kind of do this dance with them about being respectful of their privacy and their needs and what they want, but also, helping them get more help and support.
True.
So, yeah, I would have to say that it's been a lifelong commitment.
Because you're concerned for people, and I've watched you, and I observe people. That's what I've always done. I observe, I watch. And the way you approach people, the way you talk people, even when we're at, events and affairs, watching you talk to people and that, there's a look in your eyes that it's not putting people off, it's a compassion, which is, unfortunately, I think, is getting fewer and fewer people with compassion. So finding people or helping people, just very quickly, because we're getting short on time, the young kids who watched, what was that YouTube, The Thin Man?
Oh, I'm not
Yeah,
familiar
I
with
think they killed somebody or something from
gosh.
watching a YouTube.
Oh.
And this is where the people need to know there's much more in life and the strength in life.
Well, Toni, I would thank you. I appreciate your reflections. To me, compassion is what I would call a spiritual value. If you look at all of the great spiritual and religious traditions, what we call the perennial traditions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, whatever, there is a component of service or helping people is an important principle in all of those spiritual and religious traditions. And compassion has to be part of that.
It has to be.
Okay, so I appreciate your reflections, but I do think that if we can help kids, certainly, in our sphere, or in helping parents of kids, understand or help them, again, begin to maybe rediscover their spiritual values, that compassion is definitely in there, and it's definitely one of those values.
I also think, Patricia, that yes, that is important, but I also think what is important right now is your age range between 50 and 70. These men and women, the body isn't up to what it should be. Their mind is up to where it should be. Maybe they played golf. Maybe they did this or that. The body's not working. But to give a healthy outlook on that, to help them understand it's okay. I've been around lately in the past couple of weeks, a lot of women in that time frame who they'll say to me, well, I don't know how you do it. I just keep going. And not that I put myself up, I'm not doing that. It's just that I see these women who are fine. Mentally, it's bringing them down. And it's a dark hole you don't want to go into.
Yeah.
Because some women or men can't get out of it.
And again, for some people, a reconnection with a sense of, something greater.
Yeah.
You know, it's like one of the things that spirituality can do for us is help us get a bigger picture, step into a bigger perspective, so that whatever my problem is, or whatever my feelings of depression are, or anxiety, or whatever, if I can place that into this larger context of, wow, life is actually basically pretty simple. My dogs taught me that, as you said, and Jeannie, the dolphin, taught me that I can be in the unknown and I don't have to be afraid.
Don't have to be afraid.
That if spirituality can help me kind of hold myself and other people in this bigger perspective, then the problems take a much less of a dominance. They're less. They take over our lives less.
Absolutely.
They just, those are problems, but that's not me.
Right.
I'm who I am, and I live in this bigger picture of awareness of that there's something greater than me. I'm not alone, and yes, life is hard. I'm not trying to minimize it or gloss over it.
No.
But life is hard, and there's something more to my life and who I am than
it's
my
not
problems.
over right there.
It's not over here. It's like instead of the problem being like this, the problem becomes like this.
Exactly. We're out of time. You and I can go on forever.
We sure could.
We can just go on, because I've got more pages. I've got part 2 of Patricia and Toni. This one part I have to bring up. Wait. Invite the clients to become still for a few moments and gently notice the breath.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's it. That to me is the key to life, is to remember to get still and just focus in and watch your breathing. Notice that you breathe in and you breathe out.
You'll come back, won't you?
I certainly will.
And we'll keep breathing until you get back
here. We'll keep breathing.
Patricia, thank you so much.
You're welcome,
I adore
Toni.
you. And I want to thank everybody for watching our show today. Go swim with the dolphins.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll just be an eye-opening experience. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.